following is a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production.
We are back. Bock score from the old garden at Nedick's on 49th Street. I'm Ralph Tyko with the Comfortably Zoned Radio Network, and we have a panel of experts, mavens, and sports fans to talk to Al Bock tonight. We have Al Blumkin. How are you, Al?
Fine.
Good. We have GeorgeCase III.
Good evening, everybody.
George. All right.
How are we doing?
And David Hubler is here to talk to Hal. And I'm going to do something that's one of the most fun thing I do all week. I'm going to ask Hal, what's the score, Hal?
Well, the score this week is the news that there was a reduction in Major League payrolls in 2018, only the third time that's happened since 2002. Major League payrolls went down $18 million. The payroll costs for all 30 teams last season was $4.23 billion. You add another billion to that, we could have Donald Trump's wall. $4.23 billion. The striking part of this is that there's a lot of news in this, really. The average salary is over $4 million, which is not bad, for a guy playing baseball. I played it for free when I was a kid. The minimum salary is $555,000. That's the minimum salary for the 25th man on the roster. So you don't really have to make a benefit for Major League Baseball players. But it's interesting that the total outlay went down. And it's also interesting that the Boston Red Sox, who were the world champions, led the payroll outlay with $230 million, the first time that they've led the majors in salaries since the free agent era began in 1976. There were 24 teams, that's a record, 24 teams that went over $100 million. However, Boston's outlay of $230 million was the smallest for any team finishing first since 2003. So it's an interesting dynamic that we're looking at, especially with Bryce Harper and Manny Machado still out there looking for $300 million contracts. And I don't know where they're going to wind up, but it's getting close to pitchers and catches. So you got to believe that affair is going to come to a conclusion rather soon. The Dodgers were always the leaders. The Dodgers and the Yankees were always the leaders. That changed. The Yankees came in sixth at $183 million, even though they took on Giancarlo Stanton's fancy salary. The Dodgers were fourth at $196 million after leading the majors in payroll for 4 straight seasons. And they've cut nearly $100 million. They had cut nearly $100 million from their high water mark of $291 in 2015. And this year, this winter in the Hot Stove League, they cut a lot of salary by dumping Matt Kemp and Yasiel Puig and Alex Wood on the Cincinnati Reds. Then we have the Mets, Ralph and my favorite team. They finished 12th at $152 million and then traded for the remainder of Robinson Cano's fancy contract, so they're probably going to go up. They also, interestingly, gave a raise of $40,000 to Travis Deneau, the catcher, who played only 4 games last year and then had Tommy John surgery. So that must have been a burst of holiday good cheer that they awarded him a $40,000 raise. So that's what I wrote about this week, and I'm interested to hear what you guys have to think about all this.
Well, let me start because you talked about the Mets. I thought it was good holiday cheer that they signed him at all. This guy has been hurt repeatedly for like 3 years. He doesn't throw well, and I thought they would have been better off keeping Palicki, and they didn't. So but they did improve themselves dramatically, didn't they, Hal?
I don't know if they did. I mean, Robinson Cano is 36 years old.
But he's still in this coming year didn't lose much when he came back. Let's put it that way. They also got a catcher.
Do you recall the Mets trading for a guy named Roberto Alomar?
Oh,
he was an all-star, and he was a Hall of Famer. He is a Hall of Famer. But when he came to the Mets, it was like he had never played the position before. Do you remember the Mets trading for Carlos Baerga, also from the Indians, second baseman?
Right.
Both of them were second basemen. Same story. He was an all-star, came to the Mets, and he couldn't play anymore. So you never know. Talent disappears overnight sometimes. So I'm a little concerned about Cano playing second base at age 36. But we'll see. Who knows,
Okay. They did solidify their catching.
Yes.
They brought back Familia as a setup man. They got a really elite closer in Diaz. And I'm thinking with prices coming down, as they obviously are, you didn't hint at collusion in your article, but we can talk about that as to why the prices are coming down unfairly. But they are, and do you think maybe Wilpon would finally go out on a ledge a little bit and maybe sign Bryce Harper?
No.
And take that team to World Series contention?
No. No, he will not spend that kind of money, no. Because he already has a very expensive contract that he has to pay off on a player who's not playing, Cespedes, the left fielder, who probably will miss the better part of this season, if not the whole season. And he's got a very expensive contract. So, no, I don't see the Mets.
But does insurance not take care of that if the guy gets hurt like this?
To some extent.
Pardon me?
But insurance pays some of that, but he's still on the line for quite a bit of money, and I don't think they don't spend a lot of money. They don't like to spend a lot of money, so I can't see them going after Harper or Machado.
Okay, let's go around the room and get an opinion on that. Al Blumkin.
Okay, Hal, do you happen to notice where the Pirates are? I think they're near the bottom.
I did not see, but I'm pretty sure they're near the bottom.
Yeah, and they won't spend any money for any, the top free agents. And I think I don't even know who since they cut Harrison and traded Mercer, I don't even know who the highest player on that team is anymore. Maybe either Polanco or Marte. But what I think has happened is the owners have gotten very leery of very long-term contracts. And they're not giving any players in his early 30s or older, they're not giving more than a year or two. Well, I think and I've already seen dire articles that this whole thing may lead to a strike when the CBA ends after 2021. But that's what I'm seeing. I'm saying that these veterans that they're not giving them more than 1 or 2 years at the most. And they figure it's a lot cheaper to bring up the high minor leaguers, pay them what passes for the minimum, and go that route. Also, I just want to tell you Met fans, Hal and Ralph, that I think that keeping Todd Frazier around is a waste of money. Because all you're going to get out of this guy is a 220 average, a lot of strikeouts, and maybe 15 home runs. And if he's blocking Jeff McNeil, I think that's a big mistake.
Well, we don't know how they're going to use him. They also have Jed Lowry, don't forget.
But Lowry at least produced last year. Todd Frazier is not a productive player.
But they need assurance or insurance in case Alonso doesn't pan out. And they have to, send him down. So
none of these guys is a first baseman except for Alonso. So if Alonso is a bust, who plays first base?
Frazier.
Oh, come on. He's never played in his life.
Now, Lucas Duda is still out there.
Right.
Yeah.
We need him again.
Yeah. Okay, but that's my take on what's going on with this. So let's hear George or David follow me.
George.
Yep. I'm just sitting here listening to all this. I'm just amazed. I can't fathom the salaries today. And I've said it before. If I was playing, I'd ask the first question, where do I sign? I mean, to me, it's just outrageous. Looking at guy at a minimum of paying somebody $550,000 before he's even played a game. So, I question. I think
industry, and their owners aren't keeping up with paying salaries. The growth has exceeded the salaries that they're paying, so it may become an issue when, as Al says, when the CBA contract comes up.
Ralph, I hear that, and it sort of, is difficult for me when I'm thinking about it, though, because I think it's almost like closing the door after the horse is out of the barn, because, free agency has created this, and the players are, they can take whatever anybody's going to offer them, and I understand about the multi-year contracts being cut back and all that and going for 1 or 2 years, but on the other hand, living in the Philadelphia area, I just hear something yesterday on the news. They're talking about offering Machado an eight-year contract. 8 years. Now, to me, I mean, that's just ludicrous because you're paying somebody up front and you don't know where he's going to be from 8 years. And in his case, everybody's criticizing because you're going after, as I think Alan mentioned last year, a rent-a-player, and he's going after the big bucks, and yet he refuses to hustle and makes a point of saying, hey, I'm not a hustler. You guys hustle, but I'm just going to do my thing, jack a few out, run around the bases, have a good time, and laugh all the way to the bank.
That's very well put. I can see where it's frustrating. But when you mentioned free agency, I think that was good for baseball. I think that was good for the world. Because Barbra Streisand, when she entertains, there's no ceiling on what she makes. I'm using her as an example. She gets what the market demands. And if they're going to pay you, hey, you've done something, you're a world-class athlete, and you picked a sport to play in, you picked that's just booming from one standpoint. From another standpoint, there's talk about radio and TV contracts being cut back. So there's no right or wrong to this. It's just crazy. David Hubler, how do you identify these times?
Well, I was surprised that nobody picked up on this. I mean, the Mets gave Darno a $40,000 raise. Well, I know he didn't play 4 games last year, but $40,000. I mean, these guys, the owners could take that out of their wallet. I mean, $40,000 is nothing. You talk about multi-million-dollar contracts. It's almost an insult to this guy, to Darno, to get $40,000 more.
I didn't play, David.
I know. I said he played 4 games. I mean, the whole idea is it's almost an insult to give him any kind of raise. That was my point.
Well, you were right about that.
I mean, okay, we'll give him $40,000. Let me open my drawer. I'll give him the cash right now, kind of thing.
Is it monopoly money or what?
It's crazy. I mean, I don't know. I think nobody first of all, in this day and age, nobody loses money on their contract. Nobody gets cuts like they did to Mantle after his 56 Triple Crown year. they didn't cut. They don't cut salaries simply because you don't play the same. You can do worse in a year and still make more money than you did the previous season. It's really nuts. So I think that's one of the things that surprised me most was that, you know, it's almost like you go into a restaurant and you leave a dime for a tip. That's what the $40,000 represents to me.
Yeah, but you know, at Citi Field where the Mets play their home games, there are a ton of people who aren't making $40,000.
No, that's true.
At ballpark, you know.
Oh yeah.
Sign on for $40,000 in a heartbeat.
Oh, I understand. That's true. That's true. But when you put it into this, what Harper's looking for over $300 million, and Machado's looking for over $300 million. And I don't know. It just seemed to me maybe they needed as a catcher, but it just seemed kind of. I mean, if they'd given him the same salary, you could say you could understand it. But this raise to me seems almost like an insult. That's
Bill Veck said when the free agency first started in 1976, and I mentioned this several times on these podcasts, that he said right away, it's not going to be the high cost of stardom, it's going to be the high cost of mediocrity. Now, you got, you got players that stink in their jobs. And they'll go somewhere. And, for example, the Cubs have this pitcher, Tyler Chatwood, who was mediocre for the Rockies. He comes to the Cubs. They give him 3 years at $39 million. And the guy led the league in walks. He was terrible.
Well, somebody must have decided to give him that money.
Yeah, I know. Nobody decides to give it that money. But, the stars should get the big money because they draw the people into the ballpark. Your average Joe, a number of whom are pretty bad. Okay, they throw, whoever says monopoly money is right. They're throwing monopoly money at these players who can't hit, these players who can't pitch, and it destroys the whole structure.
But they can't hit and pitch on this level, but they were great getting there.
What does that mean? That means that they come up, they get rookie salaries, and what they do is they take some of these guys who show promise forever, and they give them, they go to arbitration, and then they give them, they buy out, if they become good, they buy out their arbitration. The whole thing is just geared, it's basically a payback for what the owners did to the players for the 100 years until free agency.
Well,
that's what it is, payback.
You know what Charlie Finley said?
Yeah.
Free agency first came along, and it became obvious that it was going to inflate salaries. Charlie said, make them all free agents every year.
Yeah.
Which is an interesting concept.
No question. But we're dealing with, they call themselves an association, but they're really the most powerful union in the country. They themselves have $2 billion in a kitty for retirement. You retire today, you spend 1 day in the majors, you have access to health care for the rest of your life.
I'm not so sure that's true. I think there is a minimum number of time you have to serve.
Not anymore.
Not anymore.
Yeah.
David, that's just an example of benefits that these guys get. I don't blame the player, and I disagree with you, Al. They don't suck, and you wouldn't want just superstars with non-skilled players around them. And
no, I mean, these guys are the best there is. That's one thing. They may not be good compared to one other fella, but as the numbers in the major leagues are the best players there are, whether they're hitting 220 or they're hitting 320. These guys are the best. And if they weren't, they wouldn't be there because there are always guys coming up that could play and make less money.
Yeah, and they always think, and now also they have a thing with the eligibility because if a kid has a tremendous spring training, they'll send him down for 6 weeks or so he doesn't become eligible. They get an extra year of out of him because he's ineligible for arbitration for 1 more year. They have all the tricks. The owners have always had all the tricks, and but you see guys with 6 ERAs, and guys striking out 200 times and hitting under 200, and these guys are getting paid and they don't produce.
Well, the striking out 200 times and is based on not so much their fault because they're paid just by the home runs.
Now, what do you do with somebody like Chris Davis of the Orioles? About 168, struck out over 200 times, and they have to pay him $20 million a year for at least 6 or 7 more years, and they're on the hook to him until 2037.
Yeah.
Wait a second, 2037?
Yeah, he gets some deferred payment for 10 years after he leaves, and then he gets probably vanilla money for 7 more years.
Yeah, well, most of these guys have had deferred payments. That's nothing new.
But the guy doesn't. He was terrible. He was probably the worst hitter in the American League last year.
He had 1 good year, and then had a contract, and then down to nothing.
There are no guarantees.
There were always the worst players in any era that were overpaid, if you think about it in those terms.
Somebody signed these guys. Somebody offered them the contract, and they...
Exactly. You're right, Hal. Yeah.
So, I mean, if they come to me and they offer me a contract that it has all those zeros after the first number, I'm going to sign it. Why wouldn't I? It's their choice to offer me the contract. They don't have to offer me the contract. They could go take some guy out of single A and make him the first baseman, and that's the way it is, So...
And if it weren't for the union and free agency, that's what they would do. That's, as Alan said, they had to hammer for so many years that, but I think it's gonna be balanced again. They're looking to cut these long-term contracts.
Well, that's the big issue, the length of these contracts, especially for pitchers who come in their 30s, early 30s, and they want 6-7 year contracts. I mean, that's going out the window. These guys, there are very few pitchers that can really go up into their late 30s with the same kind of effectiveness that they had in their 20s. So a lot of the clubs are not going to go for more than 2-3 years at a time now.
Yeah. Well, how does the baseball union stack up against the other unions in effectiveness for the players?
Oh, they're talking about a possible pro football lockout or strike in 2022. But the pro football union is, in a lot of ways, is a disaster. I mean, they gave judge and jury powers to the commissioner in the NFL, which is something that neither the baseball, the MLB players or the NBA players would even dream of doing. The NBA Players Union is the second strongest to baseball of the 4 major sports.
Bock, how's the hockey union coming back from the disaster of a couple of years ago?
Well, the interesting thing is that the guy who runs the hockey union, the NHL union, is Don Fehr, who came to them from baseball. He was the baseball union boss. Not a very nice fellow. In my dealings with him, he was kind of unpleasant, but he's a tough bargainer. He'll take care of those players. You don't have to worry about the hockey players. They'll be all right. I mean, the sport itself. You see, the problem here We're talking about 4 sports: hockey, basketball, football, and baseball. Football is a collision sport. We all know that. There are players walking around on Queer Street because of getting hit upside the head too many times. So that's number one. Basketball is a very, very difficult sport on your body.
Absolutely.
In terms of running up and down, up and down, up and down. And how many knees go out because of that? Plenty. Hockey is much the same as football. It's a collision sport, and it's on skates, so you're doing it on ice, and that makes it even more complicated. So those 3 sports are really difficult on your body, and you're selling your body. You have to be compensated for that. Baseball is the most serene of the 4 major sports. Sure, you have to slide into second base and take out the second baseman sometimes, or collide with the catcher sometimes. But when you can compare the amount of hits that baseball players take compared to the other 3 sports, it's minimal. And yet, baseball gets a lot of money. Baseball players get a lot of money, which means the game is still very attractive to the fans and still brings out a lot of people to watch these games. And if you want people to come out and watch your game, you can't play the single-A guy at first base. You got to play a guy who's a familiar name and might be a pretty good hitter, and fans come out to watch him.
Yeah,
fans come out, or is it a corporate thing now?
A lot of it is corporate.
It's always been that way. Yankee Stadium was always known for businessmen. Those are the people that went. But it was interesting tonight. There was a commentary. The Heisman Trophy winner this year signed a contract to play Major League Baseball, and the and he's also going to be drafted very highly by the NFL. And the sportscaster was saying, oh, give up the baseball. Go for the football's contract. And I'm thinking, you could have, as Hal just said, you could have a very nice career in Major League Baseball and do very well financially. And on the other hand, you go into pro football, and even though the commentator was saying, well, the quarterback is the most protected player, there's no guarantee. It's a much more violent sport. I'm surprised that these guys would consider taking a football contract. Look at Bo Jackson. He could have probably been a great baseball player.
Was a damn good baseball player.
Yeah, right. But his whole career was cut short.
Yeah, by a football injury.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
And the way that the football team treated him, they told him, and there was a book written called "It's Only a Bruise," what they told him, and they kept playing him, and it was a fractured hip and screwed him up totally. But the team has no regard, especially in football.
Right.
And that's all. So you're right. Unfortunately, this first-round draft choice was drafted by the Oakland A's, and he had planned to play baseball. I don't think he planned on being a Heisman Trophy winner. And they're giving him a lot of money to play.
Well, that's it. The money up front is going to be
tremendous. He's only 5'8" or 5'9". They said, well, he won't be able to see over the field when if he's a quarterback, and they compare him to Russell Wilson on the Seattle Seahawks, who incidentally is going to Yankee camp this year.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because if this kid gets hit a couple of times, doesn't have the ability that Russell Wilson has to stay out of the danger. His football career can end very, very suddenly, and then he'll have a torn ACL or something, and that'll be it for his baseball career.
Right. Well, the idea, I think Hal said it, they go where the money is. And
well, there was an interesting dynamic about that here in New York last winter when the draft, the NFL draft took place last summer. The NFL draft took place. The Giants had the number 2 pick, and the Jets had the number 3 pick. The Giants chose a running back who lit it up. I mean, he had a wonderful season, this kid Barkley from Penn State. And the Jets chose Sam Darnold, the quarterback out of USC. Now, Darnold is going to be there for 10 years. This running back will be out of the league in no more than 5 years because that's the lifespan of a running back.
Yes.
Because they get hit on every play. Every play that they carry the ball, they get knocked down. Quarterbacks don't always get knocked down. So the lifespan of a quarterback is a lot longer. So there was a lot of criticism of the Giants' pick because they could have had a quarterback for the next decade, but they chose to go for a running back for half a decade. So that's an issue. The lifespan of a pro football player is no more than 5 years. It's unusual that a player lasts longer than 5 years because of the collision of the game, the collision aspects of the game. So,
and the long-term injuries have been, we've talked about this for 2 years now, with the helmets and with the lack of protection and CTE, and it took the NFL years to acknowledge brain injuries. So, and for the privilege, and I put that in quotes, of getting the crap put out or getting the crap beat out of you, you get to spend the rest of your life with headaches and worse. So
yeah, and it's a shortened life too in many cases.
Many cases.
Well, there was a track star a number of years ago of Olympic caliber who said if he won the Olympic 100 or 200, he dropped that afterward. It would be worth it.
Yeah, well.
But that's the mentality a lot of these people go in with. And a lot of these athletes, especially, I don't know from hockey, but the football and basketball players go to those sports because there's no minor league to speak of, and they're going to get the big signing bonuses right away. And a lot of them are coming from extreme poverty.
Yeah, and how many of those people, you could say what you want about PEDs and this, that, and the other thing, but they're harmful for you. Anything with a steroid base will tear up your body. And I wouldn't do it for $5 million. I mean, even looking back, I would not want to expose myself to a life that depends on my putting that crap in your body.
Well, you don't have egos like these people do.
Yeah.
Where they're competitive to an incredible degree.
And that goes back to how you're bred. It's like you guys who remember the early tennis academies where they took they had them hitting tennis balls 12 hours a day and became vapid human beings. Parents would send the kids there to breed future income makers. And I think that's where it all got started in sports, with the traveling leagues now and this, that, and the other thing. Would you address that, Hal?
Well, I can tell you this. I know from personal experience, my son, the lawyer, when he was a kid, played hockey
from Cuse,
in a local rink. And
from Cuse.
The Cuse, yeah, that's right. Cuse had a big win yesterday.
Absolutely, on the road at Duke.
An indoor stadium. That's great. But
yes.
When he was a kid, he played hockey, and he was surrounded by kids his age, 8, 9, 10, 11 years old, whose parents had them out there playing hockey because they wanted them to get scholarships to college so that they could avoid tuition. The kids were kids trying to have a little fun, and the parents would be all over them if they made a mistake. And it's the same in my grandson played soccer, and I saw the same thing go on. Parents harrowing their sons, harassing their sons, I should say. Do this, do that, play better, because they want to win scholarships. Well, that's not
George, every time something like this comes up, I think of how great a dad you had. Tell the story.
Well, I appreciate it. I understand, the mentality is driving kids crazy. I mean, I was fortunate. My dad was a loving father. He played professional baseball, told me that he loved me whether I ever picked up a ball or not. I had no pressure to play. I just happened to love to play. And I played, and Hal and Alan and David, you go from one season to another. I mean, we played touch football or sandlot football in the fall. We went to basketball in the winter, went to baseball in the spring. And we did it because we were having fun. Today the kids get burnt out. I'm convinced that they get burnt out when the parents are putting all this pressure on them. And I've seen it myself. And Hal talks about hockey players. I've seen it with soccer players. They're trying to push these kids so hard. A lot of them get injuries. A lot of them just get burnt out and say, I don't want to do it anymore. To go after a kid who's 12, 13, 14 years old and say, man, push yourself, and that someday you're going to get a scholarship to college, I mean, that's just ludicrous. That ruins the fun of sport. And for me, as a youngster, I had fun playing, and that was the whole object of it. Hey, if I was going to have a good game, fine. If I had a bad game, that's part of it. But I had nobody pushing me from behind and saying, you got to do this, you got to do that. And my dad, and I've said this before, I'm 11 years old, and a fan says, Case, you're never going to be as good as your old man. Well, my dad said, that's crazy.
And your dad was there at a little...
He was there. He heard it, and he said, I'm not going to go to games anymore because I don't need to hear that somebody, hollering at you, which just doesn't make any sense. And I've seen the same thing with parents. They're screaming at the kids. They're screaming at the umpires. They're screaming at the coaches. I mean, these travel teams, they become very elitist. And the parents are going around, my son is playing, elite hockey or elite soccer or elite baseball, travel baseball. I mean, they go all over the country. And to me, a kid at 14, 15, 16 years of age, some of them can handle it, and some of them just say, hey, I don't want to do that anymore. I'm going to do something else. And I don't blame them.
Well, George, probably an overwhelming majority of these parents never played major league sports in their lives, and they're living vicariously.
Absolutely, Alan. I agree with that. They do, and I get into arguments with people all the time. I mean, I don't believe in it. I was never that way. I was never a parent that way. I mean, I enjoyed watching my kids play, but that's what they did. If they played, fine. If they didn't, that'd be fine too. And my dad was the same way. But I've seen parents, and Alan, you're absolutely right. They're living vicariously through their kids. And to me, that's just horrible.
Yeah, I agree with you.
Hey, guys, good show. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right. George, thank you.
Hey, my pleasure. Let's do it again. It's great having these kind of conversations. And Hal, I just wanted to say one thing to you. I enjoy reading your columns, and you've got a great way with words. I really have to, tell you that, because some of the columns are, very dry, but yours are always upbeat, and you make some wonderful points. And I just wanted to compliment you on that.
Thank you. That's very nice of you.
How I second what George has
We're
said.
not going to throw any benefits for...
I know. I second what George has said. Yeah.
Yeah. Keep it going, Hal.
I'm doing the best I can.
We're all doing the best we can. And that's the good news and the bad news all wrapped into one, right? At least in my case. All right. I hope everybody stays well. Thank you for listening. While I'm at it, before I still have George here, George, tell us about the wonderful product that we sponsor here on Comfortably Zoned Radio Network.
Well, Ralph, thank you. It so happened the other day, my grandson called me. He said, "Granddad," he said, "I want you to take a look at our website." And what he did, he upgraded and updated and really did a tremendous job. And if anybody's listening and they're baseball fans and want to really take a look at a website devoted to baseball during the war years, our website's www.timelessbaseball.com. And it's all about World War II era baseball, baseball when it was really a game that players played for fun. I mean, I can tell you, we talked earlier about all the astronomical salaries. Well, back then, baseball players were well paid, but nowhere near what they're getting today, and they were really out there playing for what we call the love of the game. So it's a different world. Back then it was a different world, and if you take a look at it, our website, I think you're going to enjoy it because there's a lot of photographs and a lot of people there that are, legends of the game that were playing, and my dad just happened to be playing at that time as well. So it's been enjoyable for me, and our website is one that I think that, will bring a lot of people to take a look back at the way the game used to be.
And they can pick up on your CD at that website if
they can. Ralph, they can. Our DVD is called Ballfield to Battlefield and Back, from FDR to JFK, and it's all color 8mm footage and narration by my father and Mickey Vernon about World War II era baseball. So you'll see the Bob Fellers and the Ted Williams and Hank Greenbergs in their prime, taking batting practice. It's a behind-the-scenes look at baseball. It's not game footage, but rather it's spring training, it's train travel, it's all the things that ball players go through, to make themselves really a ball player. But it's not something that you're going to look at and say, oh, there's the 1954 World Series. It's not about that. It's about the behind-the-scenes look at Major League Baseball.
Beautiful. Thank you, sir. And I'll just add one more thing to my request is that everybody take the opportunity to box up some new or lightly used children's books and take them down to the Head Start program wherever you are. These kids need help. They need to learn to develop an imagination through reading. They need to become school ready through reading. They need to develop a passion, like all of us developed our passion for baseball and sports through reading. And if you'll do that, these kids need it by definition. The Head Start program, we have to start thinking of the future in this country, and the future are the kids. So do that for me, and we'll be back when we're back. It should be another week.
Yeah, Ralph, I just want to add one thing. You're very lucky where you are. The weather forecast for the Northeast this weekend is going to be very, very disastrous.
I'm sorry.
Sub-freezing temperatures and snow possibly turning into ice very quickly.
That's right, Alan. It's not going to be baseball weather. That's right.
No, but Sunday afternoon they're going to be playing a football conference championship in Kansas City, and according to the Weather Channel, the ground temperature is going to be 5 degrees.
Whoa!
So it'll be a lot of fun.
Pitchers and catchers report in 3 weeks.
That's right. That's a good thing, right?
Yeah.
Absolutely is.
Well, I just wish I was like a bear and after the Super Bowl go to sleep until baseball opens.
All right, guys.
All right.
Thank you very much. I so much enjoy it.
Okay. See
Bye-bye,
most of you guys Sunday.
Network.
Bye-bye.
All right. Adios, everybody.
Bye.
Good night.
The proceeding was a Comfortably Zoned Radio Network production. Thank you for listening.